Karen Batt, Huffington Post. I very much appreciated this film, and I have a two-part question about morality. I really liked the last scene on the beach with Emma Stone, where it could seem that she's now the moral stance, that she's but when she says that she's actually titillated by the death she's come close to, it's an amoral stance. So we never get a moral stance in this movie. But that's one question. It's a response to this idea of her on the beach as not the moral ending. And the second question is...
One step at a time,
okay.
then.
That was the first question. You
Yeah.
answered me?
Yeah, those to you.
Well, I do think that, you have to be slightly, ambiguous about the ending, because you learn what you can learn. She had a lesson in life. And it's nothing that you, as she says in the movie, that you can learn from a book. She learned from having contact with somebody else, from going through a love affair, from idolizing someone who was very, very flawed, but someone who had many good points too, and was able to teach us some things. And she did come very close to dying. And I think everybody learns something from that experience. You don't learn it consciously necessarily, but if you come close, if you've gone through a terrible disease and surmounted it, or if you've had some kind of situation where you were close to death and you didn't die, you do come away with a different perspective on life. And her perspective is not simply, cardboard and one-dimensional. It's, it's moral on some issues and very ambivalent about other issues, and sad about certain things, and she'll have that her whole life. The character will have her whole life thinking about such a traumatic experience that she had with Joaquin, that and her perspectives will change. Things that she thinks she's learned at the end of the movie, when she's in her 40s or 50s or 70s, the perspective will change, and she won't be as hard on herself on certain issues, and she will be much harder on herself on other issues. And so it's very hard to, codify it.
Is it the first time, Emma, that you hear him expand about your character to that extent?
Yeah, it's interesting to listen to. Keep going. What about in her 80s? You didn't mention the 80s.
No, in her 80s, she packs it in.
Got it. I had a feeling.
80s, it's just all face work.
Ma'am?
That's a very life-affirming answer. Thank you. And my second question is, would you throw Kant away completely yourself? Because yes, it doesn't. I teach Kant, so he's obviously not fitting a real world, but it is a nice contingent philosophy, this categorical imperative, to use. No? Or
yeah, we would, none of us would think the way we think today if it wasn't for Kant. I mean, the things that he introduced and was kind of right about, that was borne out by science years later, is very interesting. And so I would not throw him away at all. I think he was certainly one of the really major philosophers. The problem with the categorical imperative is that you always try and use it in these trivial life decisions all the time, and it's not so simple as, what if everybody did that? What would the world be like? Because everybody doesn't do it, and you can make decisions that if you invoke a categorical imperative, if strictly, you would have to say, as he said in the movie, if the guy says, where is Anne Frank and her family, you'd have to say, well, they're upstairs in the attic. But the truth is, there are decisions that you make in life where you can't go by it. It's not a reliable thing. You have to, it's more nuanced than that. But I don't think you throw Kant away at all. I think you know, many of the thoughts he had about the way we think and the structure of how we think and the brain are very pertinent and have, as I say, been borne out by many things, by physics over the, you know, and science over the years.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Allen, but you always seem to be fascinated by philosophy in general throughout your films, to the extent that you sometimes had philosophers appear in the films. One that comes to mind is Crimes and Misdemeanor. Or am I wrong?
Crimes and Misdemeanors. Yeah, what happened in it? I can't.
Wasn't there a philosopher, a guy who taught philosophy that appeared?
Oh, yeah. There was that guy. Well, he was actually he was a psychoanalyst, but he wrote philosophically in the way that Primo Levi was a psychiatrist, but wrote, you know, psychoanalytically. You know, I was thinking before about. I couldn't recall whether I had read it from Primo Levi or Bruno Bettelheim, but that a number of people who survived in concentration camps survived because they believed in a false thing, and those were the communists. The communists were able to better cope with the stresses of concentration camps because they were dedicated communists and had this economic system that they all believed in fanatically, one that eventually fell apart and did not work. But the fact that it didn't work didn't matter. So this is true, apparently, you know, in the Catholic Church or in any religion, that the fact that it doesn't really work doesn't matter. It does make your life better if there is something to believe in. And so even with Joaquin, in the movie, the fact that he suddenly has a reason to live and believes that he's doing a wonderful thing and he's so irrational about what he's doing, it doesn't matter. It's that he is able to have a much better life, misguided as he is.